Hey class, looking at this discussion question, it's one that I've actually talked about prior to this, so um, not in this class, but in a former class, I've talked about this a little bit in teachings. But looking at this first question, what is the nature of false teaching in the pastoral letters and how is it combated? I think when we're reading, or when I'm reading, I pick up that Paul is sending a lot of warnings to the churches that he's writing to, or to the people that he's writing to, um, about these false teachers. So he's forewarning these people. This is what you need to look out for. This is what some signs are of false teaching, um, and then also um, he's just representing and explaining and demonstrating the true gospel. So he's sending those warnings, and then also through his writings, um, and then also I'm sure word got around of what he was doing, and just his actions that he's demonstrating what the real gospel is, to combat those false teachings. Um, and as far as do you see this threat of false teaching still around today? 100%. Um, I think I think it's more common, um, not more common, but it's a pretty common thing that we see. Um, I grew up in Mesa, Arizona, and I went to Mountain View High School. And if you guys are familiar with the area of Mesa, Arizona, or if you're familiar with Mountain View is really heavily, Mesa in general, but Mountain View specifically is a very heavily LDS high school. Um, so I grew up kind of hanging out with a lot of Mormon friends, meeting Mormon families, being kind of surrounded by that. Um, I grew up in a Christian household. My mom always took me to church, so um, I knew that was my religion. But I I had a lot of friends that were Mormon, and um, just through hanging out, I'd hear some of the things that they did at church, and um, as I grew up, I kind of grew more interested in starting asking more questions about their church and kind of what they do and what they study, and it it was very eye opening for one, but also very saddening. Um, because they're getting this false representation of who God is, um, and um, they're totally just kind of missing the point almost. And they have a second book that they worship, the Book of Mormon. Um, that is, they say it's not more important than the Bible, but they treat it as it's more important than the Bible, than actual scripture. Um, so being surrounded by that, and just knowing who God is, who the true God is, and who Jesus is, and then looking at that and wondering why they aren't, um, why they don't, why they don't know who the true God is. It's because of these false teachings that have started. And I don't want to go into a huge history lesson, but Joseph Smith said he got these tablets, and that's basically how the Mormon religion started. And he taught people. And it's one of those things where it can be really dangerous if um, someone thinks that they have come across this newfound, I don't know, prophet or scripture or some writing of some sort, um, and they can convince enough people to get on board with it, then they can kind of start their own religion, and that's kind of what happened with the Mormon Church. Um, but yeah, I think false teachings are all around us. I use the Mormon Church was the first example that popped up in my head, just because um, I was surrounded by it as a teenager. Um, but I mean, you go even further, and you can look at Hinduism and Buddhism, and just these different religions that are completely missing, and they're missing not only who God is, but they aren't experiencing who God is, and that in itself is amazing. Um, so yeah, I think false teaching is still very prevalent, um, and I don't think it's ever something that will go away, unfortunately, because um, people are just they crave power, and I think a lot of this comes from a wanting of power. So they create something that makes them powerful. Um, but yeah, those are my thoughts on this week's discussion question, on this week's video post. Also looking forward to reading everybody's um, the second discussion question this week, because that's a relevant topic and a very hot topic for me personally. So good stuff. Can't wait to listen to what everyone else has to say. Hope you guys have an awesome week, and yeah,